I want to talk about something this week's Parsha. Parshas Parah is something that we dedicated today, the Chumash program, to be able to really get into. I said to Rabbi Milstein earlier that I feel like people who worked on Parshas Chukas today to learn a little bit about Parshas Parah probably are far beyond most of the people who are going to be listening to this week's Parsha. Parshas Parah, what do we know about Parshas Parah? In fact, one of the only things that people know about Parshas Parah is how long it takes. As opposed to Parshas Zakheim, which is just a few psukim, and Parshas Zakheim, which is a little longer. Parshas Parah is a whole parak in this Parsha. It's enormous. Aside from that, some people know that Parshas Zakheim, of course, is a mitzvah deraisa, mitzvah min HaTorah, that every single, certainly men and young men, and maybe even some women, maybe even all women, are obligated to hear Parshas Zakheim. Parshas Parah, according to many, is also a mitzvah midaraisa, mitzvah min HaTorah, and it's a tremendous idea that the Rabbi came up that we should learn today by the Chumash program. We should learn Parshas Parah to get a picture, an appreciation for Tumah and Tyra, something which we are so disconnected from. In fact, we're so disconnected from it. In Navi, a story is recounted, I think it's in Sefer Chagai, a story is recounted there that the Jewish people return for the second Beis HaMikdash. And the Kohanim, we have a bunch of Kohanim here, the Kohanim get tested on the halachas of Tumah and Tyra and universally fail the test. They all had to learn it anew. They had to be trained to be able to prepare themselves for the Beis HaMikdash and for its Avodah. How is a person supposed to do the Avodah without knowing what is Tahar, what is Tameh, what is not, what is... And in this week's Parsha, a person can get a feeling for it, at least in Parshas Parah aspect. But I want to talk about Parshas Vayakhel in just a few words. Parshas Vayakhel has very few Rashis. For those people who are dedicated to saying Shnaya Mikra, Ve'echa Targum, and Rashi also, maybe Rashi, Ramban, a few other things. This week's Parsha, you can really do a tremendous amount of Mefarshim, because there are so few Rashis, and it's all repetition. As long as you can move your mouth pretty quickly, you can go through the Shnaya Mikra and Echa Targum part, and be able to learn many, many commentaries of this week's Parsha. And there's I told my class earlier, perhaps a Rashi in this week's Parsha, that had a tremendous effect on me and perhaps a disastrous effect on others. But there's a Rashi in this week's Parsha that I wanted to talk about. It's perhaps one of the more famous parts of this week's Parsha. I want to add a little take on it, if possible. The Pasuk says, the Torah says that the Jewish people, the women specifically, donated copper mirrors for use in the kior, in the fountain that the Jewish people came. The Kohanim came, they washed their hands. It was actually quite difficult. You have to be very, very flexible to be able to wash your hands properly when he went into the Beis HaMikdash. Nachman probably could do it, he's very flexible. But for a person to be able to get down there, it's quite a bit. And the women donated, and the Pasuk says in the Torah, Parak Lamed Ches, Pasuk Ches, Vayas es ha-kior, he made the kior, Nechosh is made of copper, Ve'es kanoi, and its base, Nechosh is also made of copper. Bimarois hatzoivois, which seems to mean the mirrors of the legions. Asher tzavu Pesach oil moed, who had encamped by the oil moed. What are we talking about here? Who are the mirrors of the legions of people? So there's a very famous Rashi here. Rashi says, B'nois Yisrael, Jewish girls, Hayu biyadan marois shirois bohen kishahin miskashtes. They had mirrors that they would look at these mirrors when they would put on their jewelry, when they would put on their makeup, when they would look nice. And they did not, even those, meaning they brought so many things. Of all of the things they brought, even the mirrors that the girls used to make themselves look pretty, they brought those for dedication to the Mishkan as well, to be able to be used. Moshe was disgusted by them. Why was he disgusted by it? Because a girl is using a mirror to become very attractive. Who's she trying to attract? It's something that's being used for the Yetzer Hara. That's what he said. So Moshe Rabbeinu was disgusted. I don't want that. Get out of here. Amar le'HaKadosh Baruch Hu kabel. Hashem said to him, accept them. Don't be disgusted. Accept them. Why? Ki elu chavivin alay min hakoil. These are dearer to me than all of it. Every donation that was brought to the Mishkan. These are more dear to me. Because through these mirrors, they established many, many legions of people. They had children. What's pshat? How'd they have children? Because of mirrors. When the husbands were being burdened and broken in Mitzrayim, very interesting. Listen to this. The wives wanted to encourage their husbands. They wanted to be able to build the Jewish people. So first they brought their husbands food. Okay? Then they brought their husbands what to drink. And the husband was broken. He's broken. He can hardly move. I spoke to a person this morning. He has no appetite. There's no appetite. So what's he going to do? He can't move. He has no interest in food. So the wife would sit there, and they would feed their husbands. Here, take a little this. Take a little piece of bread. Whatever they had. I remember my grandmother, Zakheim, when she went to the concentration camp of Mauthausen. So they came inside, and their whole family came together. It was a big schus. The whole family came together. But Mauthausen was we mentioned earlier, it was a horrible camp. The people in Auschwitz said that Mauthausen was worse than Auschwitz. They get to Mauthausen. They said in comparison to Mauthausen, Auschwitz is a walk in the park. They get to Mauthausen, and my grandmother sees her uncle there. Her uncle is there just lying on the floor. They weren't sure if he was alive or they hadn't seen him in a year. They see him. His name was Nachman. They said, Nachman Bachi, Nachman, Uncle Nachman. They look at, what's going on? They said, Nachman, wake up. Oh, why? He said, your wife is here. She came with us. His wife we hadn't seen in a year. He thought everyone had died except for him. She's here? Yeah, and the whole family. They're all together. Really? And we're going to go get you food. And they ran. Where are they going to go? They had some water. They had some grass. They made a fire. They tried cooking it a little bit. They went to bring it back to him to machilas, to bring him what to drink. Unfortunately, just hearing that his family was alive was the last reason he had been holding on to life. To be able to know something about his family, by the time they came back, he had passed away already. My grandmother would say that it was a big bracha that they saw him, because then his wife was able to get remarried. Many women after the Holocaust were not able to get remarried. They're agunais. But because they saw Nachman Bachi, they saw this Nachman, so therefore they were able to get remarried. But the wives, it's like the Holocaust. The wives see their husband totally broken, and they fed them. Okay, what does the mirror have to do with that? After they fed them and gave them what to drink, the women took mirrors. They would take the mirror, hold it afar, and they would see the reflection of themselves and their grimy, beaten, horrible, bleeding husband. They would look in their reflection. And they would start encouraging their husbands. They would say to their husbands, aren't I more pretty than you? That's what they would say to their husbands. Their husbands had what to eat now. They had what to drink. And they see their wives are more beautiful than they are. And at that point, they finally awoke their husbands, and from this, they encouraged them once again to act as husband and wife, and they created large, large families in Mitzrayim. And that's what these mirrors were. That's what these mirrors were. So Hashem said, Moshe Rabbeinu, you find these disgusting, kabel mehen. Now, there's an inordinate amount of things to say about this. There's a lot of psychology to say about this too, but there's a tremendous amount to say about the Jewish women, b'schus nashim tzidkaniyas, b'schus nashim rachmaniyas, because of the women we survived. There's a lot to say about it, and go thank your mother. Somebody told me yesterday, a very, very wonderful and special person, Yeshiva, told me yesterday, he said to his mother, you're a very, very kind person. He told his mother he's a kind person. How often do we tell our parents that they are kind and giving and balei chesed? Yeah, how often do we say that? Do we tell our parents that? But over here, the Torah is telling the Jewish people that you Their mothers, these wives were the ones to take care of that. Okay, that is the classic. I want to add just a small little point. I was bothered. I went to a seminar yesterday. I thought the seminar would be wonderful and useful for the yeshiva. Perhaps it will be, perhaps it won't be. I was there at 6 o'clock. I was staying there for quite some time. I had to leave early to go to the basketball game last night, which was wonderful to be there. And I'm by the seminar. I thought it would be a great event. It turns out this event was full of our wonderful Heilige brothers. I should say perhaps it was full of our wonderful Heilige brothers. Because of the 100 people that were there, 99 of them had long beards and long payas and big hats. And I wouldn't say that it was my crowd. It was a Hasidic gathering. I was told that it wouldn't be, which is wonderful. I love all my Hasidim, but it was very, very geared toward the Hasidic Chevra. So while I was waiting, the one thing that only a struggle for me is that the event was called for 6 o'clock. So I was there at 6 o'clock, and then I hear that they're not going to start until 6:20. Okay, I start at 6:20, and of course they didn't start until 6:40. So that's the part of the Hasidic event. So what am I going to do from 6 to 6:40? So I was learning Chumash, and I was learning this Rashi, and something struck me. Perhaps it's correct, perhaps it's not correct. You tell me. I was bothered. If you look at this Rashi starts off, and he says, "B'nais Yisrael hayu biyadan maros." The B'nais Yisrael, the daughters, the girls of the Jewish people, had in their hands mirrors. Fine. They would use these mirrors. They would make themselves look gorgeous. Then later on, it says, Hashem says, accept these. Why? Because through them, the Nashim created and established big amount of Jewish people by encouraging their husbands. Why does it start off talking about the B'nais Yisrael, the young girls, and then it switches to Nashim? Shouldn't it stick with Nashim and go to Nashim? It should start off by saying, Nashim, Hanashim, earlier it talks about the Nashim. Hanashim hayu biyadin marius shirayas ben kashem miskashles. And then later on it'll say the Nashim established the Jewish people. Or it goes B'nais Yisrael, the daughters of the Jewish people. I don't know, it's a cute way of talking about the Jewish people. The B'nais Yisrael, the man B'nais Yisrael. There's a fellow I know in a shul, he wanted to start an organization about shidduchim, to get people to go out later and earlier and all that, to deal with the shidduch crisis. His organization is called Leman B'nais Yisrael, Libi. That was his organization. He's a very devoted person. But B'nais Yisrael, what's this B'nais Yisrael? B'nais Yisrael or Nashim? Good question. You like this question? It's good. Okay, you could say it. You could say you don't like it. But B'nais Yisrael, Nashim, which one is it? As I'm sitting there with a lot of time in my hands, I was thinking that perhaps this is Pshat. And you know who came with these mirrors? You know who came with these mirrors? The B'nais Yisrael. The daughters of the B'nai Yisrael. Banais are daughters. And they came. They came to Moshe Rabbeinu with these mirrors. And Moshe Rabbeinu was moyes b'hen. He said, it's disgusting. It's disgusting. These mirrors, you use it to make yourselves beautiful, attractive, and gorgeous with all your makeup and everything. This is not what we need. We're not using Yetzer Hara and putting it into the Mishkan. Hashem said, Kabel, accept these, because you know whose mirrors these are? These mirrors are the Nashim's mirrors. Not their mirrors. They inherited it from the women throughout Jewish history in Mitzrayim. As they were going through generation after generation of horrible Holocaust-like experiences in Mitzrayim. The Nashim, the women, older women, who were in Mitzrayim used these mirrors. And these young girls, the B'nais Yisrael, inherited them. And they had these mirrors. They kept the mama's mirror that their mothers had been using. And they held on to it. And Hashem said, when I see those mirrors, I see where these B'nais Yisrael came from. The B'nais Yisrael who are in front of you, they wouldn't exist without the Nashim before them, the women before them who had used those mirrors to encourage their husbands to build a beautiful family. That's why there's the B'nais Yisrael in the beginning, and there's the Nashim in the end of this Rashi, because the B'nais Yisrael were holding the mirrors, but it was the mirrors of the Mama. It was my mother and my grandmother's mirror to be able to uphold the Jewish people. how much do you appreciate what your grandparents did to establish you on this world as fine Jewish people? How much do you appreciate it? How much do you think about it? That you'd be gone, disappeared in the diaspora of the Jewish people, totally lost. My Rabbi Shurkin Shlita, who should live and be well, when he gives a shir, he has a great sense of humor, of course. Sometimes he will stop and shir, and he will point out a guy, and he will say, Eliezer, do you have a very, very righteous great-grandmother? Usually it's the guy who's spacing out the most. Like, oh, I don't know. Do I? Oh, I was thinking about that. Do you have a righteous great-grandmother? Maybe. I think so. You must have. To be able to hear the pshat I'm about to say, you must have had a righteous great-grandmother who was davening and davening and davening that you should be in my share at this point to be able to hear this pshat. That's what he would say. You must have had a righteous great-grandmother. Your grandmothers, your great-grandmothers, the people who brought you to this world, the nashim shehemidu, the nashim atzayvos. You might not have your grandmother's mirror. You might not have your grandmother's leichter. There are some people who have it. They have a leichter in their house, candlesticks from their grandmother, tefillin. I have my grandfather's tefillin he got from someone during the camps. He got it right after the Holocaust. It's you can't even use it. It's so different than the tefillin we use nowadays. It's bendable. It's an entirely different type of tefillin. But you have things from your grandparents. And if you don't have anything, you have your Heilige Neshama. You have the person that you are. The person that you exist as today. It comes from somewhere. Pesach is coming up. Pesach is a Yom Tov shebechol dar v'dar. Every single generation. You look back and you talk about what you've been taught from your grandfather, his grandfather, your grandmother, and going all the way back. I'm curious. By a raise of hands, who here has grandparents? A lot of people. Beautiful. Beautiful. When I was your age, I had 4 grandparents, and I had a great-grandmother. She was 106 years old when she passed away. You're very fortunate. You have, who here has 4 grandparents? You have 4 grandparents. Yeah, who has 4? Maybe more. Some people have more than 4 grandparents. You have 4 grandparents. Beautiful. 3 grandparents. Who has 3 grandparents? 2 grandparents? 1 grandparent? Amazing. You have a grandparent. You ever send them a letter? You ever send them an email? You ever call them up on Erev Shabbos? You call them up. Beautiful. It's beautiful. I know somebody here in yeshiva does as much as he can and goes to visit his grandmother. Tries to visit her every single day, unless he's going to Kaipar. But he goes to visit his grandmother. Do you call your grandparents? Do they know you well? Do you know them well? My Rosh Hashiva, Rabbi Yaakov Bender, his father died when he was very young. He had just gone to high school, and his father passed away. And before that, he had a grandfather. His grandfather's name was Rabbi Avram Bender. Rabbi Avram Bender lived in Eretz Yisrael. He was one of the few who moved to Eretz Yisrael to be there for the rest of the end of his life. And Rabbi Bender's father, Rabbi David Bender, used to send him a letter every single day. You know what he would write in that letter? My kids ate this morning, and this in the afternoon, and they played it with their friends, and they went to yeshiva, and this one hurt his foot, and this one got new shoes. And he gave them the whole thing. Because your grandparents want to know. They want to know that my grandchild is still using that mirror. They're still impacted by the life I gave them. Last night by the game, there was a person sitting behind me. He was from the other team. And his son, whenever his grandson scored, he would say, "That's my grandson." He was an older man. "That's my grandson." You have certain people who don't have necessarily the most advanced connection to Judaism. I would say Ezra Academy is the most yeshivish place. Rabbi Edelman's, both of his parents worked in the Tyrus HaKodesh of Ezra Academy to be able to support the Jewish people there. What connection do parents have? But you have a grandfather who wants to be involved in his grandson's game in the yeshiva. And every time his grandson scores, or gets the ball even, I haven't even got the ball, that's my grandson. He was locked in. He was locked in. Because the basics of a person's life, the grandparents want to know. They want to be involved. Don't you owe it to them? It happened to have been with Rabbi Bender. It made a big difference. His father passed away, and his grandfather ended up coming back to America. He had not really seen much of his grandchildren, but because his father had written those letters all the time, he knew them intimately. Because he always read the letter, every word, and your grandparents want to read it, and they want to know what's going on in your life. You can call them. Today is Erev Shabbos. Get on the phone, dial the number, call your don't text them if your grandparents are cool enough to text. Like that grandmother who always just texts, and she didn't know what LOL meant, so she thought it meant lots of love, right? So she always writing lots of love, and then sadly Uncle Ernie died, so she wrote Uncle Ernie's dead, LOL. Okay, your grandmother might be very cool. She might be texting. Don't text your grandmother. Call your grandmother. Call your grandfather. Spend some time with them. They brought you to who you are today. You exist because of them. I don't have grandparents to call anymore. I don't. My grandparents have all passed away. I can't call them anymore. When I was in Eretz Yisrael, every Thursday night, I'd call my grandmother and grandfather. They were old. They'd get on the phone. They'd be on the phone together. My grandfather asked me the same exact questions every single week. And you'd think my grandfather's a huge Talmud Chacham. Was like, what are you learning this week right now? No, it was never that. He always asked me, how's the weather? If it's too cold, it would say, are you bringing a coat to yeshiva? Do you have a coat? Are you dressed warm? Is your room? You know what? Because when he was in yeshiva, he was freezing to death, sleeping with 5 guys in one bed because they had no room. It was the poor people of Poland. And then my grandmother would get involved, and she was the one always asking me learning questions. So then I asked her all the psak shaylas, all my halachic shaylas, and she would answer all the halachic shaylas. Okay, fine. Unfortunately, she came from a Lubavitcher background. So when I asked my grandmother about whether which half of Sphira we hold, the first half or the second half, she said, what are you talking about? We hold both halves. Chabad. Okay, we hold both halves. So I call my grandfather separately to get an answer. But calling your grandparents. Call your grandparents. Pesach's coming. If you aren't fortunate enough, which I was, Baruch Hashem, fortunate to spend every single Pesach with my grandparents. But if you aren't fortunate enough to have that opportunity to spend Pesach with them, call them every Friday. Okay, maybe you can't spend every day with lunch. Maybe you're not going to go to them for lunch if they don't live in the neighborhood. Maybe you could. Maybe you can't. I don't know. But call them up. They want to hear from you. As awkward as it sometimes can be to call your grandparents, they might not just be as cool as you. They might not just know exactly what to say. That 5-minute phone call said, I met your grandfather. Came to the learning program there, Simcha. You have grandparents that want to know. You should remember this. It's such a good pshat in Rashi. I love it. Yeah, there's pshat in Rashi. Rashi says it was the Bnei Yisrael who were bringing the mirrors. And they donated the mirrors that were the nashim. They donated the mirrors of their mommies and the mommies because they knew, I am built on what my grandparents did. And you are built on what your grandparents did. Make the phone call. Call your grandparents. Spend time with them. Not as a chesed to them, as a chesed to you. Oh my gosh. Can't imagine how your life will change if you have a relationship with your grandparents. And he has a great grandparent. And if anybody else has a great grandparent, I wish my great grandmother spoke a word of English. My great grandmother spoke Hungarian and Yiddish, and it was not a Yiddish I ever heard of in my life. And the Hungarian, all I got was, shai napunim. That was as much as I got. Halavai, Bez Hashem. You should have b'zoicha to have a beautiful Shabbos, and you should have beautiful simchas and nachas and zmiras with your grandmother and grandfather, Bez Hashem.